Deepti Laurent joins me on the set for a look at the papers today. Hi, Deepti.
Hi, Jeannie.
You're starting with a report about how Iran wields power within neighboring Iraq.
That's right. This report from the New York Times and the investigative website The Intercept, it's based on 700 pages of Iranian intel that was sent to The Intercept anonymously. The New York Times and The Intercept have say they verified the authenticity of the information. They don't know who sent it, though. It does show the extent to which Iraq has fallen under Iranian influence, particularly since the U.S. invasion in 2003. And when you read this article from the New York Times, one name comes up. That's General Suleiman. He's the head of the Iranian Al-Quds forces, who gets dispatched regularly to Baghdad to prop up the Iraqi prime minister there, Adil Abdul Mahdi, whenever there is trouble, like most recently with the protests in Baghdad. The report also details years of meticulous work by Iranian spies to co-opt Iraqi leaders, to pay off Iraqi agents, and, quote, infiltrate all aspects of political, economic, and religious life in Iraq.
Next now, Deepti, another big story we're focusing on today out of Hong Kong, where protesters are still barricaded inside the Polytechnic University.
That's right. That standoff with the police centers is in its third day now, and around 100 students still hold up there. The South China Morning Post speaks of a confrontation marathon. The only way out of this crisis, the paper says, is if Beijing takes a road to, quote, unconditional negotiations. The paper actually calling on Chinese authorities to make that first step. After all, they say China's, quote, global stability is not threatened by the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong, which in numbers represents a very small part of the population. The Chinese press, the mainland Chinese press, not really heeding those calls for dialogue. The Global Times, the official Chinese government newspaper, rails against a ruling on Monday by the Hong Kong High Court that deemed the anti-mask law unconstitutional. The paper says, who does the law protect? Does it protect the ordinary people and police, or does it protect the, quote, violent, black-clad rioters?
Deepti, something completely different now. Today, if you didn't know, is World Toilet Day, and that's a chance to shed light on millions of people's lack of access to proper sanitation.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, sanitation in particular in India is a major issue, Jeannie, so much so that you'll know that Narendra Modi, the prime minister, made building new toilets a cornerstone of his prime ministership. According to a UN study, at least in India, a lack of sanitation is directly impacted by social standing. So a Dalit woman who's of a very low caste in India dies 14.5 years, almost about 14 and a half years younger than a woman from a higher caste, due in part to a lack of proper sanitation. Transgender people face discrimination when using public facilities. The writer here saying beyond building new toilets, the inclusion, social inclusion, is the key to any sanitation goal that India sets.
Now, staying with that theme of better sanitation, researchers in the United States say they have developed a spray. It's a spray-based process that will actually make toilets self-cleaning.
Yeah, this is music to the ears of any of us who've had to use a toilet scrub in our lives. U.S. researchers have developed this coating that forms a slippery surface. It prevents unsightly stains from sticking to the inside of the toilet pan. The spray lasts up to 500 flushes. It can be applied to urinals, and it also repels bacteria. And the main goal, they say, is to reduce water wastage. They say it could reduce water wastage up to 50%. It's super important, especially going forward as more and more countries grapple with things like drought and water restrictions.
No, it certainly is. All right, next, now you found a report that talks about the lack of gender diversity in major sports bodies.
Yeah, this report from the Telegraph Sport today, as European sport leaders meet in Finland to discuss the issue. The 10 major sporting federations representing the Olympics, football, cricket, basketball, rugby, athletics, golf, tennis, hockey, and cycling have fewer than 40% of women on their board, Jeannie, and no female president currently. Federations are facing calls to have their funding slashed if they don't heed these calls to include more women in their top management levels. Cricket is the biggest offender, with just one of its 18 board members being female. And the proof of making changes is there. Years ago, World Rugby made some dramatic changes to include more women, and as a result, women's rugby benefited through the equal branding of the sport.
Dipti, you're going to wrap up now with something kind of disgusting. It's the
very
creator
disgusting,
of a cocktail
Yes.
who's just died. A disgusting cocktail.
Yes, that's right. Captain Dick Stevenson died last week at the age of 89. Captain Dick, as he was known for his boat tour trips in the Yukon River, came up with the Sourtoe Cocktail in the 1970s, quite sort of as a lark, really, but it became something much more than that. But before I continue, there is a picture of that cocktail, so you're warned because it is quite graphic. So the Sourtoe Cocktail, as it promises, is a shot of whiskey garnished with a mummified human toe.
Awful.
It's served in a hotel bar in Dawson City, Canada. It, as you can imagine, became very quickly a hit attraction for visitors and locals, people donating their toes to the bar where the drink was served. The legend being that if your lips touch the toe, then you get exclusive access to the Sourtoe Club. Well, after his death, the captain of that Sourtoe Club, Dick Stevenson, he had very specific wishes. He's donated all 10 toes to his signature cocktail, and there's a toe-shaped urn that's being made for his ashes.
I didn't even know that was legal. Oh, Dipti, thank you.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
Dipti Galon there with a look at the papers today. Don't forget, you can get a closer look at all of that on our website. That address, france24.com.